Yes.
And this is directed by RZA, and it stars Russell Crowe and
Lucy Liu.
And Lucy Liu, correct. I'll do the introductions of. Well, I'll do the synopsis. Russell Crowe, Kung Lee, and Lucy Liu, and Pam Grier. And this is basically it's a feudal. Robert Zemeckis and directed by Robert Zemeckis and starring Denzel Washington, John Goodman, and somebody named Kelly Riley.
She was good.
She was great, and, which stars Kristen Stewart, Robert Pattinson, directed by Bill Condon, and it's just another one of these vampire movies. Saga Brown, it's the
Twilight Saga.
Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn.
Breaking Dawn Part 2.
4 bags of popcorn. And how about you?
I'm going to give it 4 bags of popcorn with
called Anna Karenina. Starring Keira Knightley, Jude Law. And this is an adaptation about Russians from a book. And it's a classic chick flick, I guess. Sometimes those movies are not great, but this one is. It's about Tolstoy. Leo Tolstoy wrote the book. And it's set in Russia. Is called the
Frozen Ground.
Frozen Ground with Nicolas Cage and directed by Scott Walker, and it's about a murder serial killer movie.
It's a serial killer movie.
Van Damme movie with Dolph Lundgren. Jeff Lund. Another Jean-Claude Van Damme movie with Dolph Lundgren.
Dolph Lundgren. All right.
Dawn, which is a movie about people who are being attacked by Russians, or in this case it's the North Koreans, and these teenagers fight back, and I won't give away the ending, but it's a happy ending. So they are attacked by Russia, or tested loyalty, starring Daniel Craig. And it's another example of Lincoln, and it's got everybody in it. Daniel Day-Lewis and Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Tommy Lee Jones and a number of other people. This movie is about by Gabriele Muccini, and that's with Gerald Butler, Jessica Biel, and my favorite actor, Dennis Quaid. It's a really great. There's surprisingly Bill Murray as President President Franklin D. Roosevelt. President Franklin Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's not Frank FDR. Yeah, of course. What was I thinking? Oh, so it stars
Bill Murray.
Stars Bill Murray, and people are thinking, well, is it a comedy? No, it's not, but it has a lot of great heart to it. This movie blew me away. I thought it was so funny, not funny, but well done. And Roosevelt was one of our first presidents.
Well, he wasn't one of the first. He was one of the.
And IMAX. I mean, I tell you, I am such a fan of these Lord of the Rings movies. Jackson's back at the helm. You got Morgan Freeman, Ian McKellen.
It's Martin Freeman.
Martin Freeman, Egan McKellen, Richard Armitage, and
of course the big star Bilbo Baggins, the Hobbit himself. And that's what really makes this movie rock and roll. He's sort of a personal hero of mine, and to see him fully realized like this.
Also give that 5 popcorn bags.
4 or 5, whatever. Great music.
Okay, let's just jump into the Chris Pratt, Jessica Chastain, Joel Egerton.
These are no-name actors. It's a cheaper sort of movie.
Directed by RZA, and it stars Russell Crowe and
Lucy Liu.
And Lucy Liu, correct. I'll do the introductions of. I'll do the synopsis in the movie. And it stars Russell Crowe, Kung Lee, and Lucy Liu, and Pam Grier. And Robert Zemeckis and directed by Robert Zemeckis and starring Denzel Washington, John Goodman, and somebody named Kelly Riley.
She was good.
Which stars Kristen Stewart, Robert Pattinson, directed by Bill Condon, and it's just another one of these vampire movies, I guess. Sometimes those movies are not great, but this one is. It's about Tolstoy, Russians from a book, and it's a classic chick flick, I guess. Sometimes those movies are not great, but this one is. It's about Tolstoy. Leo Tolstoy wrote the book, and it's set in Russia, and called Anna Karenina. Anna Karenina, starring
Karina.
Keira Knightley, Jude Law, and this is an adaptation with Nicolas Cage and directed by Scott Walker, and it's about a serial killer movie. Another Jean-Claude Van Damme movie with Dolph Lundgren. Another Jean-Claude Van Damme movie with Dolph Lundgren.
Dolph Lundgren.
And it's directed by Dan Bradley. Great cinematographer, director, Ang Lee, and I think this is going to be definitely got my Daniel Craig. And it's another example of Bond doing what he does, spying and whatnot. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Tommy Lee Jones and a number of other people. This movie is about Abe Lincoln, and it's got everybody in it. Daniel Day-Lewis and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Directed by Gabriele Muccini. And that's with Gerald Butler, Jessica Biel, and my favorite actor, Dennis Quaid. Surprisingly, Bill Murray as President President Franklin D. Roosevelt. President Franklin Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's not FDR. Yeah, of course.
Stars Bill Murray.
Stars Bill Murray, and people are thinking, well, is it a comedy? No, it's not, but it has a lot of great heart to it. This movie blew me away. I thought it was so funny, not funny, but 3D and IMAX. I mean, I tell you, I am such a fan of. You got Peter Jackson's back at the helm. You got Morgan Freeman, Ian McKellen.
It's Martin Freeman.
Martin Freeman, Egan McKellen, Richard Armitage, and
of course the big star Bilbo Baggins, the Hobbit himself, and it's great.
And what about the dragon Smaug? S-M-A-U-G.
Well, I mean,
the other movie we had is Les Miserables, Les Mis, I guess you can call it, and that's I also give that 5. Well, a lot of great acting going on in this. Chris Pratt, Jessica Chastain, Joel Egerton.
These are no-name actors.
Jack Reacher, directed by Christopher McQuarrie, starring Tom Cruise. And I'm so glad to see Tom Cruise back in the mix. Billy Crystal, and it's been a while since we Bette Midler and the great Marissa Tomei. And it is fun, family-friendly, funny. Tarantino, Jamie Foxx, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Don Johnson star in this Western. Steven Soderbergh directed Channing Tatum and Rooney Mara.
Mickey Rooney?
No, it's Rooney
What is it?
Mara.
Rooney. Okay.
It's 2 names. And Jude Law from
The great Jude Law.
right from director Seth Gordon, Commissioner Gordon. And starring Jason Batman, Melissa McCarthy, who we all know, and Jon Favreau, who's a director. John Moore, and it stars Bruce Willis, Jai Courtney, and some Mary Elizabeth Winstead, 2 women, I guess. This stars Brendan Fraser. It's an animated film. Brendan Fraser, Sarah Jessica Parker, and James Gandalf.
From The Hobbit.
James Gandolfini. 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 James Gandolfini. Directed by Rick Roman Waha, or it's W-H-U-G...
Vaughn. I think it's pronounced Vaughn.
W-A-U-G-H.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was V-A-U-G-H-A-N is Vaughn.
No, this is director Rick Roman Waha. And he's a no-name director, so. This stars the great Dwayne Johnson, who I guess is not going by Rock anymore, and Susan Sarandon and Vince Velasquez, Nadine Velasquez, Mexican name, with Kerry Russell, Dakota Goyo, and Josh Hamilton. And directed by another three-name director. I guess that's a new trend in cinema here. Director Scott Charles Stewart. Those are also three men's first names. So, with director John Lucas and Scott Moore, a directing team. You don't see that very often. With Miles Teller, Justin Chun, and Skylar Aston. This is about Ewan McGregor and Stanley Tucci and Nicole Hout and Bill Knight. It's great and powerful, directed by Sam Raimi, and it stars James Franco as Oz, and Mila Kunis and Michelle Williams, who's very good-looking. The second movie is Dead Man Down with Colin Farrell, my favorite actor Dennis Quaid's my favorite all-time. Carrie, with Kimberly Price directing, Pierce, and Chloe Grace Moretz, Julianne Moore, and Judy Greer. John Scardino, and that stars my favorite comedy actor, Jim Carrey, Steve Carell, Olivia Wilde, and Steve Buscemi. So a couple of Steves in this movie. Another directing team here. We got Kirk D'Amico and Chris Sanders. Starring the voices of Nicolas Cage, Ryan Reynolds, and Emma Stone. Retaliation, directed by John M. Chu, and Channing Tatum again, and again with Bruce Willis, and again with Dwayne Johnson. Three of some of my favorite current film stars. Directed by the Tyler Perry, starring Tyler Perry, Vanessa Williams and Kim Kardashian was in this. Kind of funny to see her in a movie. I thought this movie was funny. Not my. Another Steven Soderbergh movie that we talked about earlier in the year. We talked about him, and this is another thriller, and it's another movie by Steven Soderbergh. So it gets a high marks from me.
One of those movies where you're enjoying.
With Robert Redford, and Shia LaBeouf and Nick Nolte. Wow. Well, this is another Steven Soderbergh movie that we talked about earlier in the year. We talked about him, and this is another thriller, and it's another movie by Steven Soderbergh. So, Lone Ranger, directed by Gore Verbinski, and actors of Johnny Depp, Helena Bonham Carter, and somebody called Armie Hammer. And this is a typical story starring Steve Carell, Al Pacino, Kristen Wiig with two eyes, Miranda Cosgrove, Russell Brand, and Steve Coogan. This is a cartoon, and it is basically a sequel to Despicable Me 2. Of course, this is an Adam Sandler movie with Steve Buscemi, Kevin James, David Spade, Chris Rock, Maya Rudolph. And Lenny has relocated his family. Rim, directed by Guillermo del Toro. It's a weird name. Charlie Day is not a movie star. Somebody named Idris Elba is not a movie star. Charlie Hunnam is a joke. And if you're saving money, if that's what this is about, and it's actually opening today. It's directed by David Soren, starring actor Ryan Reynolds, one of my favorite actors, Burt Reynolds' son, Paul Giamatti, and stupid. Geomedy. Paul Giamatti.
Giamatti.
Paul Giamatti.
The great Paul
Italian-
Giamatti.
Italian guy.
Oscar winner.
Michael Pena and Bill Hader. So this is another great directed by Bruce Willis and directed by Dean Prashnat and starring Bruce Willis. Listen to this list. This is an impressive list. I mean, this has got to be like the best cast there ever was. Bruce Willis, Anthony Hopkins, John Malkovich, Helen Merman, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Mary Louise Parker. Wow. Let's talk about The Wolverine with James Mangold, directed by James Mangold, acting by Hugh Jackman. I don't know any of these names. Famke Janssen. Famke Janssen. Brian T. Is it Brian? What the hell's a Brian T? Brian Lee.
It's like a golf term or something, huh?
Yeah. Well, this is a bunch of no names except for Hugh Jackman. Wolverine makes a voyage to Montana first, with Kate Blanchett and Alec Baldwin and Peter Sarsgaard and Louis C.K. Louis C.K. Which is two is directed by Raja Gosnell, sort of an Indian name but with an American name in the back.
Sounds like a Smurf name, doesn't it?
Yes. We have, this story is about, we got Jonathan Winters in this movie, the late Jonathan Winters, and Christina Ricci, Neil Patrick Harris, and Anton Yelchin. Stars Noah Burrow, actors Eva Green, Lena Headey. Again, I don't know who any of these people are. This is the problem with this movie. I give it, let me say this, I give it 4 bags of popcorn right off the bat because it's because of the action. But this movie made a huge mistake. It didn't have Gerald Butler in it, who was the star of the first one. And they made say it's the Greek general some Greek name, battles an invading army of Persians who are commanded by the mortal god turned Zexus.
Less confusing than it sounds. I think anyone can follow this plot. It's
Today is Percy Jackson, Sea of Monsters. Directed by Thor Freudenthal.
Freudenthal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And stars
German name.
Logan Lerman, Sean Bean, Nathan Fillion, Stanley Tucci, and Jake Abel. Bunch of no names. Directed by Neil Bloom. All these names. Neil with 2 L's. Stupid. Blomkamp. This is a practical joke. Jodie Foster, Charlotte Copley. Starring Jim Carrey, another great Jim Carrey performance. Chloe Grace Mortez, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Christopher Mintz-Plasse. Made up names. It's directed by Edgar Wright, actors being Simon Pegg, Martin Freeman, Rosamund Pike, Nick Frost, and the story is of 5 friends directed by Jeff Renfro, with cast of Lauren Fishburne, Bill Paxton, and Kevin Zegers. Hawk, Selena Gomez, and John Voight. Brett Magna is the name of this documentary. One of your favorite groups,
Yes.
One Direction.
I loved it.
Yeah, they were, and it is for kids, but you know what? I feel like a kid at heart. So this is directed by the great Morgan Spurlock, starring Harry Styles, Nilan Horan, Louise Tomlinson, Zayn. How do you say it? I never know how to say it. Zayn Malik, and Liam Payne. It's an all-access pass to the British pop sensation One Direction in concert. We had such fun at this movie too because I didn't even know their music, but she turned me on to. Did I tell you this, Greg? She turned me on to them, and now she's got me addicted to some of their music. So by the time we went to go see it, I knew all the songs, and we were having a lot of fun singing along. And we took my niece, who's 11, and she loves One Direction, and we had so much fun watching this movie. Riddick, directed by David Twohy, T-W-O-H-Y. What the hell? How do you pronounce that? Twohy. Twohy. David Twohy.
Like the old Tweety Bird from the Warner Brothers cartoons.
Looney Tunes.
Looney Tunes.
Okay. Actor Vin Diesel, we know who he is. And Carl Urban's Katie Skakoff, David Babusta, Barista, or Bahusta, Bayusta, Bastadita, Bahast, David Bayust, Katie Sackhoff, and Vin Diesel. Left for Dead, Riddick finds himself up again. Or directed by Peter Berg, with a cast of one of my favorites, Mark Wahlberg, speaking of Bergs, Ben Foster, and Eric Bana. Bana. Batman. Or is he Batman?
There's no.
It's called Her. Not Ben-Hur, just Her. Directed by Spike Jonze, and starring Jacqueline Phoenix, Amy Adams, and Scarlett Johansson. And this is a lonely writer develops an unlikely relationship with his newly starring. We're directed by Peter Lepenitis. Peter Peter Lepenitis. And cast of Will Arnett, one of my favorites, Katherine Heigl, and Brendan Fraser. Certainly, Ice Cube, whatever that is, Kevin Hart, Tika Sumpter, and John Leguizamo? Leguizamo. And this is about a fast-talking security guard joins his cop brother in The Hobbit. Yes, The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. Starring Peter Jackson, Martin Freeman, Martin Freeman. It's supposed to be Morgan Freeman.
No, it's Martin Freeman from the. He was in the original Hobbit too.
Okay.
Same
Ian
cast
McKellen,
from the first movie.
Richard Armitage. The Dwarves, Bilbo and Gandalf. Director is Tyler Perry, and also starring the Tyler Perry with Chad Michael Murray, Larry the Cable Guy, and Kathy Najimy, Indian name. Medea. This is a Medea. Our movie today's are I, Frankenstein, which is a 3D movie directed by Stuart Beatty, and cast of Aaron Eckhart, Bill Nighy, and Miranda Otto. And this Ron Krause, Vanessa Hudgens, Rosario Dawson, Brendan Fraser. A teenager, Greg, welcome back on the show. Directed by Jason Reitman, with Kate Winslet, Josh Brolin, Tobey Maguire, Clark Gregg, 2 names there, Greg James, and Greg. Wow. Movie directed by Phil Lord, Chris Miller, and Chris McKay. 3 directors, 2 with the name Chris, and the other one named Phil Lord. Cast of Channing Tatum, Jonah Hill, Kobe Smulders, Elizabeth Banks, Morgan Freeman. There's Morgan Freeman. Liam Neeson, Alison Brie, Nick Offerman, Pratt, Dre, Will Arnett, not Will Ferrell. Will Arnett and Will Ferrell.
It's a big cast.
Too many people. With Jose Poeta, stars or directed RoboCop 3D with Joel Kinnaman, Abby Cornish, Jay Baruchel, and Gary Oldman. Movie today is Pompeii, starring Emily Browning, Paz Vega, Kit Harington, and my favorite actor, Kiefer Sutherland. A slave turned almanac, starring Sir Major, Amy Landecker, Johnny, bunch of no names. This is a story about. And it's directed by Jaume Colette Serra. Her name is Jaume, Jaum. It's a joke name. That's the name of some kind of soup, not a man's name.
I've never heard of any soup
name
like that.
Jaume Colette Serra joke. Casted by Liam Neeson, Julianne Moore. I love Julianne Moore. She's very pretty. And Anson Mount. And Air Marshal Spring. I'm going to talk about the movie Need for Speed, starring Aaron Paul, or directed by Scott Wagha, with an H, Dominic Cooper, Imogen Poots, becoming a household name, Kid Cudi, and Michael Keaton. of Shame, starring Elizabeth Banks, Tig Notaro, James Marsden. And this is a reporter's dream. And we got directed by James Bobbin, Tom Hiddleston, obviously the Muppets, Kermit, and Piggy, and the rest, but also humans being Salma Hayek, Christopher Waltz, and Ricky Gervais. This weekend, Deliver Us from Evil, directed by Scott Derrickson, directed by and starring Eric Bana, Edgar Ramirez, Oliva Munn. It's just Munn. Okay. Oliva Munn. So we have a New York police officer joins forces. And Tammy directed Ben Falcon with Melissa McCarthy, Susan Sarandon, and Dan Aykroyd.
Elwood Blues is back.
Yeah.
35th anniversary of the Blues Brothers this year.
Back, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, directed by Matt Reeves, starring Gary Oldman, Kerry Russell, two names, Andy Serkis. The circus is back with Andy Serkis.
Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus.
What's that?
The Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus. If you've ever been to the circus.
Next film is And So It Goes, directed by Robert Reiner, starring Michael Douglas and Diane Keaton.
From The Godfather and The Godfather 2.
This is not Jupiter Ascending, directed by Andy Wachowski. Lana Wachowski. Again, the same name. There's a mistake here. It should be Andy Wachowski and Lana, some other name that they got wrong here. That stars another f***ing name that I don't get. Mila Kunis. Sean Bean?
Sean Penn.
Yeah, Sean Penn. This is another animated Disney movie of Pixar quality, directed by Roberts Ganaway. Roberts, huh? Should be just Robert. With Dave Cook and Julie Bowman. Bowman. And when the world's famous air racer Dusty learns his engine is damaged, and he makes. So, but I did get a chance to see the movies today, and I can read very close up.
Want me to do that?
Yeah, let's read those.
Today's movies on Cinema at the Cinema are Wish I Was Here, directed by Zach Braff.
Wish you were here.
Wish I Was Here, starring
Chris Pratt, Vin Diesel. I can't hear that. So he's in Zoe Saldana. Bradley Cooper. And the film is about Up. Directed by Date Taylor.
I can just
starring who? Chadwick Boseman, David Andrew Lloyd Nelson, and John Atlas. Chronicles of James. First movie is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the remake, starring directed by Jonathan Liebsman, with Megan Fox, Will Arnett, William Fitcher, Johnny Knoxville, and my favorite actress, Whoopi Goldberg, back in the saddle. Whoopi. Greenfield, Nina Dobrev, Jake Johnson, and Damon Wayans Jr. Two pals dressed as police officers for a costume party. This is directed by Patrick Hughes, starring Sylvester Stallone, of course, Jason Statham, Jet Li, Wesley Snipes, Mel Gibson, Harrison Ford, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Tom Cruise, Tom
the gang's
Hanks,
all here. I mean, these are the best Hollywood
Ford.
has.
I'm not done reading the names here.
Yeah, okay. But it is a good cast.
Starring Sylvester Stallone, Jason Statham, Jet Li, Wesley Snipes, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks, Jack Lemmon, Paul Newman.
Okay, now you're pulling my leg. But
Dolph
it is a good
Lundgren.
cast. It is a good cast.
I was wondering if you were paying attention. This is Sin City, A Dame to Kill For. Finally, Sin City is back. Directed by Frank Miller and Robert Rodriguez. Starring Jessica Alba, Mickey Rourke, Rosario Dawson, Bruce Willis, and Jamie King. November Rain, starring Roger Pierce Bronson and Oleg Konio and Elizabeth Taylor. That's an ex-CIA is Jezebel, starring Kevin Durant. Directed by Kevin Garrett. Sarah Snook, made-up name. Mark Webber, Joel Carter. Returning to Her Childhood Home, Dark Places, directed by Gilles Packet Brenner. I don't know what that is. What is that? Gilles Packet Paquet. It looks like the word racket, like racket, but with a P. Gilles Packet Brenner. Gilles. Paquet, is it French? Paquet Brenner. Yeah, we'll have to live with that one. Starring Charlize Theron, Chloe Grace Moritz, and Nicholas Hoult. A bunch of no names.
Like Taking Care of Your Baby.
No. Of Grey, directed by Sam Taylor Johnson, starring Dakota Johnson, another Johnson, Jamie Dornan, and Aaron Taylor Johnson. So another 3 Johnsons in this movie.
Old character, he's current character, but yeah, Kingston, who is the special agent, master code breaker, breaks all the codes.
The director Matthew Vaughn, starring Colin Firth, the old Michael Caine, and Taron Egerton, whoever that is. Veterans Seek. First up, we have Hot Tub Time Machine 2, starring Rob Corduroy, Craig Robinson, Chevy Chase from Animal House, and Gillian Jacobs. When Lou, McFarland USA, by Nico Caro, starring Kevin Costner from
Dance with Wolves.
Yeah. Maria Bello and Morgan Saylor. A cross-country coach of a small California town transforms a team of athletes into a movie called Focus. 2 directors here, Glenn Ficarera, John Requa, 2 directors. I don't know what's wrong with one. We got starring one of my favorite, Will Smith, Margot Robbie, and Rodrigo Santoro. Our next movie is Lazarus, directed by David Gelb, starring Olivia Wilde, Donald Glover, Mark Duplass, and Evan Peters. A group of medical students discover a way to get out of here. We got Chappie, directed by Neil Blomkamp, starring Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackman. Oh, the old Sigourney Weaver is back. And Charto Copley, whoever that is. Of the second movie we have here, this one's, ironically, the second best exotic Marigold Hotel, directed by John Madden, the football guy, I guess.
Good coach.
Starring Bill Nighy, Julie Dench, Maggie Smith, and the great Richard Gere. A young, enterprising hotel owner juggling Chris Hemsworth,
He's done
Cillian.
a lot of other things than Richie Cunningham.
I know,
Director.
but I'm just saying he was in the original Happy Days show.
Directed Cocoon, which we discussed.
A whaling ship is preyed upon by a sperm whale. I want to talk about the next movie here, Cinderella. We all know the story of Cinderella, directed by Kenneth Branagh, starring Kate Blanchett, Lily James, Haley Atwell, and Helena Bonham Carter. A live action. All right, and today's movies, we have the Diversion series, Insurgent, directed by Robert Schwenke, S-C-H-W Wenke, starring Shailene Woodley, Jace Courtesy, Miles Teller, Theo James. And Beatrice Pryor must confront. I really recommend that. We also have The Gunman, directed by Pierre Morel, and starring the great Sean Penn, Idris Elba, and Javier Bardem. Interesting, Unusual Spy. Let's get into it. Get Hard, starring directed by Ethan Cohen, starring Will Ferrell, Kevin Hart, and Alison Brie. When millionaire James King is nailed for fraud and bound for San Quentin, he turns to Darnell Lewis to prep him for life behind bars. I like this movie a lot. Greg, what did you think? Story, one of the directors from last season, was one of our directors, starring Jim Parsons, Rihanna, Jennifer Lopez, and Steve Martin, the original bozo Steve Martin with the white shirt and white suit. When Earth is Overtaken, directed by James Wan, starring Vin Diesel. This was a good one. Paul Walker, who's dead, died on this movie. Dwayne Johnson, Jason Statham, Kurt Russell, the great Kurt Russell. Deckard Woman in Gold, directed by Simon Curtis, starring Ryan Reynolds, Katie Holmes, and Helen Mirren. Maria Altuit here. Ex Machina, directed by Alex Garland, starring Oscar Isaac, Domhnall Gleeson, and Alyssa Vikander. A young Sean McNamara. Yeah. Starring Pierce Brosnan, guess once again, with William Hurt and Benjamin Walker. King Louis, Ant-Man, directed by Peyton Reed, and stars Paul Rudd, Greg Turkington, Michael Douglas, Michael Pena. Ant-Man armed with the Fantastic Four, directed by Josh Trank. Josh, one of the greats, my captain, Josh Trank. This one's for you. Fantastic Four, starring Tim Heidecker, Miles Teller, Kate Mara, Michael B. Jordan, not the basketball player, and 4 young outsiders. Let's talk about our movies this week.
Movies.
Speaking of empty bottle, Black Mass. Directed by Scott Cooper. Actors Johnny Depp, one of my favorites, Benedict Cumberbatch, Dakota Johnson.
Just Dakota.
Oh, okay. Dakota.
Dakota,
Okay.
like the state.
Dakota.
It's
sorry,
just Dakota. It's
Jo-
just Dakota.
This is. Okay.
Dakota.
Oh, it's like
Like
North
the-
Dakota.
Yeah.
North Dakota.
Or South
I'm sorry,
Dakota.
Dakota Johnson. Okay. The true story of White E. Whitty Burglar, the brother of a state senator and most infamous violent criminal in the history of South Boston. The Scorch Trials. I love his Maze Runner movies. Directed by Wes Ball. Actors Dylan O'Brien, Nathalie Emmanuel, Thomas Brody Stanksters. Okay. Having escaped the maze. Pan, directed by Joe Wright, acting of Hugh Jackman, Mara Rooney, Garrett Hudland, and Amandra Siegfried. The story of an orphan who is spirited away to the magical Neverland. This is a Peter Pan. Eat naturally is my message. Steve Jobs, directed by Danny Boyle. Susan Boyle, singer. Might be related.
This is a movie, though. It's nothing to do
I'm
with
saying the
music.
director Danny Boyle might be
Everything
related
doesn't have
Susan
to
Boyle.
be about music. When it's about movies, it's about movies.
Acted by Michael Fassbender, Kate Winslet, Seth Rogen, Jeff Daniels, and it's a movie about Steve Jobs. It's directed by not David Letterman, but Rob Letterman. Acted by Jack Black, Halston Sage, Dylan Minnette, Ken Marino, Amy Ryan. A young kid teams up with the niece of Young Age of Spies, directed by Steven Spielberg. I almost feel it's insulting to Steven Spielberg to be seated during one of these for his movie. So I would like to stand. Are we able to frame for that? No? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it really matters.
Well, just show him some respect. Sit up straight.
I'll give the film 5 bags of popcorn.
All right.
That's the ultimate mark of respect.
I plan on it. This is directed by Steven Spielberg, acting by Tom Hanks. I mean, do I need to say any more? Alan Alda and Amy Ryan. I'm glad I said more because Alan Alda is one of our greats too from MASH. And this is an American lawyer who was recruited by the CIA during the Cold War to help rescue a pilot detained in the Soviet Union. It's a Cold War spy thriller directed by the master of cinema, Steven Spielberg himself. Everyone said, well, I thought Steven Spielberg was retired. And he came out. Tom Hanks, you've never been finer. Since Forrest Gump, I've never seen you do a better film performance. This is 5 bags of popcorn. If you have anything. M and the Holograms, directed by John M. Chu, starring Juliette Lewis, Stephanie Scott, Ryan Guzman, Molly Ringwald from the old Molly Ringwald movies. As a small by Gregory Plotkin, acted by Olivia Taylor Dudley, Chloe Sezengeri, and Brett Shaw. It's Aaron Creevy with actors Anthony Hopkins and.
No, not really. I mean,
We've
I
been
will.
so busy. I mean,
That's the title.
all right. Just directed by Justin Lin, cast starring Chris Pine, Idris Elba, Sofia Boutella, Zoe Saldana. The Enterprise, starring Hillary Clinton. Yuck. She's sour to look at. Usually I would hate to see her in a movie, but this is an expose of her. And Hillary's America, The Secret History of the Democratic Party, stars Hillary Clinton, Dinesh Souza, Soja, and cast starring Dinesh and Elizabeth Jackson and Artie Mazzoni. And this is a documentary
About some new movies.
All right, we are starting with the great one, Mr. Woody Allen, coming back out with another movie. Cafe Society, starring Steve Carell, Jamie Lynn Lee, Cheryl Lee is her name, Todd Weeks, and
Ensemble
and
cast.
Woody himself, I would assume, is in this. Saturday we have Jason Bourne, directed by Paul Greengrass, starring Matt Damon, Alicia Vikander, Julia Stiles, and Tommy Lee Jones, one of my favorites. Jason Bourne, starting with Suicide Squad from David Ayers. Margaret Robbie, Will Smith, Cara Devleridge, Ben Affleck, Jared Leto. Directed by David Lowery, starring Bryce Dallas Howard, Keith Urban, Robert Redford.
Sundance
Carl
Kid. The Sundance Kid.
Yes, our Robert Redford.
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance
All right.
Kid.
The adventures of an orphan boy named Pete and his best friend Elliot, who do Sausage Party. Directed by Greg Tiernan.
I didn't direct this one.
No, Greg Tiernan and Conrad Vernon. Directed by, starring James Franco, Kristen Wiig, Paul Rudd, Seth Rogen,
Ant-Man.
and Edward Norton. An animated movie of Her, directed by Timur Bekmambetov. What is that?
Bekmamatov.
Timur
Bekmamatov.
Bekmamatov.
Is that German?
That's Russian.
Russian.
Bekmamatov, yeah.
Casted by Jack Houston, Nazanin
Bunyadi.
Nazanin Bunyadi, and
Eilert Zurer.
falsely accused Jewish nobleman survived. Cuba and the Two Strings, directed by Travis Knight. Rooney Mara, Matthew McConaughey, Charlize Theron. Cuba lives a quiet life in a small village. Kind of quirky movie. Jonathan Jakubowicz, starring Robert De Niro, Ellen Barkin, Anna de Armas, Edgar Ramirez, the legendary Robert De Niro, and a Mechanic, starring Mechanic: Resurrection, directed by Dennis Gansel, cast starring my favorite actor Jason Statham, Jessica Alba, and Tommy Lee Jones, my favorite actor too. Arthur Bishop, Morphine. Sully, starring Clint Eastwood, and with Tom Hanks and Lauren Linney. The story of Morris Chestnut, Glenn Mushroom, and Teddy Roosevelt. Hold on now, Joe.
I wrote a little letter here, I think, that kind of sums up about how all of us feeling.
One is Snowden, directed by Oliver Stone, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Shailene Woodley, Nicolas Cage, one of the greats, Scott Eastwood, that's Clint Eastwood. The story, one of my favorite movies of the year, Bridget Jones' Baby, directed by Sharon Maguire, starring Renee Zellweger, Emma Thompson, Patrick Dempsey, and Colin Firth. The continuing adventures of The Magnificent Seven, starring directed by Antoine Fuqua, starring Chris Pratt, Haley Bennett, Denzel Washington, Matt Boner, Ethan Hawke. 7, Andy Sandberg, Michael Key, and Keegan. Michael Key, Keegan, Kelsey Grammer, one of my favorites, and Jordan Peele. Storks have moved on from Mythic Kong. Actors: Tom Hiddleston, Hiddleston. So this is basically a King Kong movie. I loved it. I give it. Call Skull Island with Tom Hiddleston, Brie Larson, Samuel L. Jackson, and this
Pulp
is
Fiction.
Yep, directed by Jordan Vogt Roberts. A team of Next up, John Cena, directed by Doug Liman, starring Aaron Taylor Johnson and Laith Lakanini. An American sharpshooter is trapped in a standoff with an Iraqi sniper. Is T2. Train Spotting, starring Danny Boyle,
I hate these seats.
Danny McGregor, Johnny Lee Miller. Continuation of the Train Spotting saga, reuniting original characters. All right. So this is a Terminator movie. This is a remake of the Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger is the Belko Experiment, starring Greg McLean with actor Andrea Arginano, Josh Brender, Tony Goldwyn. In a twisted social experiment by Dax Shepard, starring Dax Shepard, Michael Pena, and Jessica McNamee. The Adventures of Two Hollywooders, directed by Dean Israelite. Bryan Cranston, Elizabeth Banks, Bill Hader, and Naomi Scott. A group of high school kids who are directed by Hendel Butoy, starring Tom McGrath, and directed by Tom McGrath. Just have one director. You don't need two directors. Actor Miles Christopher Bakshi, the great Alec Baldwin, Eric Bell Jr., and Jimmy Kimmel. A Suit-Wearing Briefcase, directed by Nikki Caro, acted by Jessica Chastain, Daniel Bruhu, Johan Heldenberg. Tells the account of the Lost Village, directed by Kelly Asbury, with Joe Mantelangelo, Rainn Wilson, Mandy Patinkin, Demi Lovato. A mysterious John Gunn, with actors Mike Vogel, Faye Dunaway, Erica Christensen. That's a coincidence. Based on a true story. Oh yes, Fast and Furious 8, The Fate of the Furious, directed by F. Gary Gray.
Who directed all the others. So he's back in the saddle again.
Acted by Vin Diesel, Dwayne Johnson, Charlize Theron. When a mysterious of the year. So 5 bags. What was it again? 5 bags?
5 bags of popcorn, because that's the highest rating, and 8
I don't
Hot
want
Wheels.
that. Sorry, I don't
vintage
want that.
Hot Wheels.
It's just wine,
I
but
want
it's in a
champagne.
different
That's
cup.
red wine.
Don't come back,
All right,
Mark.
The Lost City of Z, James Gray, starring Sierra Miller, Charlie Hunnam, Tom Holland. True life drama, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, with James Gunn, directed by James Gunn, starring Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Sylvester Stallone, Vin Diesel, Bradley Cooper. Set against the backdrop of Awesome Mixtape 2, starring Aidan Gillen, Deborah Winger from
Urban Cowboy.
and Jessica Sula, a long-married, dispassionate couple. Let's see. I did see these. King Arthur. Remember King Arthur? Legend of the Sword. Directed by Guy Ritchie. Starring Charlie Hunnam, Jude Law, Annabelle Wallace, and Eric Bana. A live-action feature endorsement for King Arthur. Next up, we have Snatched. Directed by Jonathan Levin. Acted by Amy Schumer, Goldie Hawn, Ike Barinholtz, Wanda Skype, Emily recently a Pacific Rim
Yes.
Uprising. So that's a sequel to Pacific Rim 2, Pacific Rim 1, which didn't have a subtitle to it, just Pacific Rim.
Well, this doesn't have a subtitle either. It's just called Pacific Rim Uprising. There's no colon between Pacific Rim and
So
Uprising or dash.
Pacific Rim, directed by Stephen S. DeKnight, starring John Bodega, Scott Eastwood. That's not Clint Eastwood, which we're familiar with, and Charlie Day.
Charlie Day and DeKnight is the director. It's Night and Day.
Jake Pent, Sherlock Gnomes, directed by John Stevenson, and starring the great Johnny Depp, James McAvoy, and Emily Blunt. Garden Gnomes,
It's gnomes.
I'm sorry, Garden Gnomes, Gnomeo. Oh, Gnomeo and Juliet. That's like Romeo and Juliet. Recruit Ready Player One, directed by
Steven
Steven
Spielberg,
Spielberg.
the master.
Starring Ty Sheridan, Olivia Cook, Ben Mendelsohn. When the creators of a virtual reality world, directed by Tyler Perry, one of our favorite directors, starring Tarji P. Henson, related to Jim Henson, Jasmine Simon, and Daniel Nicolette. Directed by John Curran, starring Kate Mara, Olivia Thirlby, Jason Clarke. This is a story of Ted Kennedy, Lion Ted Kennedy. Anymore. All right, let's get into the movies. First up, Chappaquiddick,
Like they said in the movie about 500 times if you saw the movie.
Directed by John Curran, starring Kate Mara, Olivia Thirlby, Jason Clarke. This is a story of Ted Kennedy. Sergeant Stubby, an American hero. Helena Bonham Carter, Logan Letterman, Gerard Depardieu. The true story of the most decorated dog in American military history. Second is
Genesis.
Overboard, directed by Bob Fisher. Two directors, Bob Fisher and Rob Greenberg, starring Anna Faris, Eva Longoria, and John Hanna. This is a remake of Overboard with Goldie Hawn. Rampage, directed by Brad Payton, starring Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Malin Akerman. Based on the classic 80s, it's a video game movie. Directed by Ken Kreskinensky, J. Kren Chan Ras S. Kahar. Starring, motherfucker, J. Chanchka S. Kahar. Rob Lowe, there you go. Emmanuel Trickricki. When a border dispute arises between...
Let's do 3 per episode and show the Delgados that we really have something here.
Well, there's one movie today, unfortunately. The Avengers, starring Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Chris Hemsworth, Josh Brolin. The Avengers and
James Brolin.
That's right. Thank you very much. The Avengers and their allies must be willing. By Ben Falcon, starring the great Melissa McCarthy, Julie Bowen, Gilligan Jacobs, and Maya Rudolph. Okay. When her husband, James McTeague, starring Gabriel Union, Billy Burke, Richard Cabral. A woman fights to protect her family during a home invasion. Basically, a watch-out story, be careful what you wish for story, I suppose.
I don't think anyone's wishing to have their home broken.
Abominable, directed by Jill Colton and Todd Wilderman, casted by Chloe Bennett and Eddie Izzard and Saul Paulson. This is a story of a magical Yeti Judy directed by Rupert Golb, starring Renee Z. All right. Zellweger. Zellweger. Directed by Rupert Golb, and Michael Gambon and Jesse Buckley. This is the story of Judy.
And the new segment that we're debuting tonight, Joe on Location. This is something that I think On Cinema fans and Estevez heads are going to go crazy for. We've been working this one up for quite a while, so stick around. Let's get a look at it.
All right. Do you want to talk movies, or we're going to keep prattling on about nonsense?
This is movies.
Okay.
So
First movie we want to talk about coming out this weekend is Gemini, directed by Ang Lee. Oh, starring Will Smith.
from Men in Black.
Mary Winstead, Winstead, and Clive Owen, two first names there. An over-the-hill hitman faces off against a younger clone of himself. And this is sort of a sci-fi, I kind of call it a spy-fi thriller. And it's kind of got a mix of everything. It's got a little horror, a little sci-fi. The Addams Family, directed by Greg Tieran.
I didn't direct it.
Conrad Vernon, cast by
I did
Shiraz.
direct Decker versus Dracula, but not The Addams Family.
Starring Charlize Theron, Finn Wolfhard, Chloe Grace Moritz. And this is just The Addams Family cartoon.
It's not just The Addams Family.
Well, it is, and this is lazy Hollywood once again coming back, and have no ideas. They just pilfer through old movies. Directed by Tim Miller, casting by the stars are Mackenzie Davis, Arnold Schwarzenegger, great Arnold Schwarzenegger from Terminator, and Edward Furlong, Sarah Connor. We all remember Sarah. Ed Norton casted, starring Bruce Willis. Willem Dafoe.
Die Hard.
And Ed Norton is almost doing the whole Woody Allen thing where he's starring and directing.
And I had a Die Hard shirt on
last
week that you didn't even mention.
And this is set in the 50s where lonely have done this off the line or privately.
Well, maybe we can edit it later.
Charlie's Angels, directed by Elizabeth Banks, which we saw together last night.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Banks, Naomi Scott, Kristen Stewart, Patrick Stewart, too. Kristen Stewart's son or somebody related to each other. It was too busy with life. And it
Busy
comes at you
emailing
fast.
people that were saying, where's my Star is Born 4-pack?
Right. So you have not seen Knives Out
No, but I will see it. I'm going to see it this week.
and Queen and Slim.
I'm going to see it tonight.
Yeah.
I'm going to see that tonight. I'll see it tonight.
Reviews this week. Everyone go.
I'm going to see that tonight.
Reviews this week. Everyone go do your own reviews.